how's it going? Just a quick peek on me. I'm here at Joan Altenhoff's house, and she is a rose specialist and part of the Calgary Rose Society, and she's written a book. Here, Joan, actually, why don't you pass me the book? And which we'll link below. An amazing book on growing roses, and she's actually going to help us or show us how to grow roses from seed. Can you believe it? You can actually grow roses from seeds. So Joan's going to show us that. Here we go. I'll turn the camera around. Oh, this is Joan's rose. Check this out. You've had this in a pot for a while, a few years, or?
This rose has been in the pot for 2 years, and the reason why I left it in the pot was because I wanted the hips to ripen up so I could use the seeds. So it's been put back in the garage again for the winter, and I see that my hips have ripened. So we can use these hips to take the seeds out and see if they amount to anything.
So Joan, how can you tell that they fully ripened?
Because they're red. Well, it depends on the rose. If you're going to do a Spinosissima, which is Prairie Peace, say, that rose, its hips turn black.
Oh.
But most roses, especially the modern ones, their hips always turn red.
Okay.
They're all different shapes. This one is Prairie Princess, this rose. This rose hips turn like they're round and they turn red. Here's one that's not ripe. That one. So probably the seeds wouldn't be viable. But these two hips, this one isn't quite as red, but it might be okay too. But for sure this one's good. Now, just get a pair of clippers and cut it off. Maybe we'll take two. I had an interesting talk with somebody who does, a friend of mine who starts rose seeds as well, but she is on this hybridizer's website, and some of those people will cut their hip off like this, maybe leave some leaves, and stick it in soil to see it will start like a cutting and see if the hip ripens up. Or maybe stick it in a glass of water on your counter or something and see if the hip rose ripes up. But I always just wait until they're ripe.
And they would do that only because it's a hybrid, because you wouldn't get the original, you wouldn't get the hybrid variety if you started it from seed. Is that why?
That's right. Mm-hmm. And when I first started doing this, I wondered why my rose came out and it didn't look like Prairie Princess. It looked different. It might even be a different color. Just depends what their ancestry is, what's in their background. Mm-hmm. And somebody said to me, well, you know, if you have 6 kids, do they all look exactly the same? And I realize now, so, you know, a bee probably got to this. Who knows where that bee brought the pollen to this rose? Yeah. Maybe the bee got the pollen from this rose. You know, you don't know, because the bees are all over the yard, and other insects are taking pollen here and there, wind, things like that. So the only way to know what your mother and father are is if you take pollen from a rose and put it on this rose, and then you know the genetics of both the female and the male.
Right.
But right now, all I know is that the mother of this one is Prairie Princess. Okay. And so when the seeds germinate, if they germinate, some seeds won't, you don't know what you're going to get. You might get a pink rose, you might get a white rose, you might get a yellow rose. It's always a surprise. Right. But the great thing about using a rose, these modern roses, like Winnipeg Parks is a really good one to try to start seeds from, because they will germinate, they'll grow, and the first year you will get a bloom, which is so exciting. But if you take a once blooming rose, you might have to wait 3 years to get a bloom. So the best thing is, I say, start with Winnipeg Parks. It germinates and it makes nice babies. So that's what, and everybody grows Winnipeg Parks, or you
It's
know,
a lovely,
you can buy it still. So.
It's very hardy rose.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah. So,
Perfect.
all right.
Okay, so now we go back to the place where you're going to show us how to grow.
That's right. I'm going to open these up and show you what to do.
Okay, great.
To start taking your rose, you go and gather your hips and make sure, right now we know this is Prairie Princess, but sometimes I go and I gather a whole bunch of hips, so I try to remember, hey, this one came from Winnipeg Parks, this one came from different roses. So always remember where your hip came from, and maybe just do one at a time, or take little bags out, stick them in with a name on. So what we need is, we need a Ziploc bag, we need some soil. This is Sunshine Mix number 4, but you can use peat moss. And if you're only doing a few hips, just go to Safeway and buy, or a store and buy a small bag of peat moss, but I'm just using this. Now, you don't want to have it too wet, so I just put a little bit of soil in this pot, and then I'll add some water and mix it up, and then I'll put it in the Ziploc bag. You don't need a lot. When I first started, I would have the bag full, but all you need is enough so that the seeds can sit in this stuff. All right, my next thing is I need to open these seeds, or these hips. So you can use your fingers, but I use an X-Acto knife, and I just cut them in half. And there's the seeds. Do you need more? That's great. Okay, and I put them in. Now, you don't have to do this, but there is, I don't know if it's scientific evidence or not, that rose seeds that sink will germinate, and seeds that float will not germinate. So I'm just going to take these little seeds out and drop them in there. And when I first started doing this, I'd save every single seed I could get, but now I usually just take about 8. But you see, we got some sinking, we got some floaters. So just pick them out of the inside of your hip. I use my fingers, but you don't have to. So there. Now, make sure you write on your Ziploc bag and I always put the date. Say November 16th. So I have this little thing, and I pour this.
That's just like a tea strainer.
Yeah, it's just a tea strainer. And then my hips that sunk, I just take them out and just dump them in the Ziploc bag. And I just shake them up in there. And then I put them in the fridge and I leave them until March. And I take them out and then just lay them out where there's some light and just see if they germinate. And once they germinate, it's hard to, like, you know, you got this little thing and there's white roots, and then there's probably 2 little green leaves, which are sort of the beginning leaf. They're not true rose leaves.
Yeah.
So you can leave them in the bag until the true rose leaf comes out, and that will just look like a little maple leaf, I always think, when the true rose leaf comes out. And then I always just lay this down, cut it open, and then I plant my little tiny seedling in a pot. And This is a seedling from last year. He's taken his time to get going.
It's getting a little fuzzy.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. So this guy was from a rose called Bay's Blueberry by L83. And I took a hip and got the seed. So it's taking his time to get going because this started in March. So I'm hoping he will survive and I can see what kind of a bloom I get. And now it's just, I don't know why it's taking its time. Sometimes I think maybe I should have put it in a smaller pot.
Right.
So that, I think these roses are trying to make roots before they start growing up.
Right, right.
You know, so it's trying to fill this whole pot with roots. So I probably should have started a smaller pot. And, you know, this is something that's good. The other thing I used, and I can show you, I showed you this method because this is the method I've always used, but I did something different this year, and I'll show you that.
So Joan, the reason why we should explain that you need to put the seeds in the refrigerator is because they need a period of stratification.
That's right. Yeah.
They need a certain time of cold stratification in order to get them to produce the
That's right.
plant.
And I have a friend who I've learned all this stuff from, and her father was a excuse me, was a hybridizer. He hybridized some roses. I have two of them out here, Amy and Wilbur. And he was telling me that Percy Wright, or she was telling me Percy Wright, who hybridized roses here too, heritage roses. Percy Wright used to just stick them in a soup can and stick them in the snow for the winter.
Oh.
But I've never tried that. I always just put mine in the fridge. And sometimes I've taken them out in February. Actually, in February I start looking at them. If they've started to sprout, then I take them out.
Okay.
If they haven't, I just leave them in the fridge and till March and check and see if any have sprouted. But at that point I do take them out and get them into the light and the heat. And this is what I did this year. I took these little coffee cups, filled it with soil, put my seeds in, and put them in the fridge.
Okay.
So when they start sprouting, I can just leave them in this little pot instead of trying to take them out of the Ziploc. It's an experiment I'm doing this year. I hope it works.
Right, you're trying not to disturb the roots, basically.
That's right. And when you do pick them up by, I think the top. Pick them up, but you have to kind of make sure that they're not stuck in the soil in the Ziploc bag.
Right, right. You kind of have to be very gentle with them, I guess.
That's right, yeah, yeah. So I thought, I'm going to try it this way this year and see if they start growing in this little pot, then I don't have to disturb them at all.
Yeah.
And I can just let them grow, and then when they're big enough, I can take them out of this little pot and transfer them into bigger pots.
Yeah.
There they all are.
Here are the ones that Joan did for cuttings. They seem to be doing really well, Joan.
This one isn't doing so hot, and I don't know what's wrong with him, but yeah.
Well, look at these cuttings. Good job.
What I'm trying to do is more of these heritage roses that you can't buy anymore. That's what I try to start cuttings from. I don't try to start cuttings from modern stuff.
Okay.
Mostly you can buy that modern stuff, but right now there's a few you can't buy anymore, like Nicholas is not available anymore, and a few of the Mordens and the Explorers, they're not available anymore anywhere.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, you can always check though at Cornhill Nursery in New Brunswick, because they have a lot of those heritage roses and the modern Explorers and things like that.
Perfect.
Okay, well, we'll just go to the fridge and,
Okay.
I mean, I think everybody knows how to put stuff in the fridge.
Okay, let's go to the fridge. Oh, you have a separate fridge here.
Yeah. So this is these are my seeds that I've done this year. And I just put them in these little pots. And then I just stuck them in a Ziploc bag so it would keep the moisture in.
Right.
Yeah. And make sure you don't put apples in with them. I don't, you know, they always say that, But I think, well, it's already in a Ziploc bag. How did that?
Yeah, it's the hormone it secretes. It
Yeah.
makes them ripen.
Yeah.
Senescence, which means
Yeah.
it's dying. It's ripening. So yeah,
Yeah,
so you don't
yeah.
want that to happen.
Yeah, so I don't put any fruit or any kind of thing in here, except my seeds are in here, and maybe some beer once in a while.
Okay guys, thought we might show you Joan's rose garden too a bit, how it looks during the winter months. Just trying to protect the camera a wee bit. Here we go. There's Joan in the back. She's going to give us a little tour. Here we go.
All right, we'll walk around the garden. Right now on this side, everything's covered up. These are tender roses. And also under there are cuttings that I started last year that grew, but they weren't big enough to leave outside. So they're protected under here too, but they're
nice.
Planted in there.
And you've got a tarp, you've got probably some compost, some leaf or something?
It's all just leaves.
Okay.
I used to put peat moss on, and in our book it might say to use peat moss, but some of the members have started just putting leaves over and they're having good results. So I'm trying leaves this year, just leaves, and then it's styrofoam boxes. And then the boxes are kind of getting old, so we put tarp over them to keep them a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, and they're probably insulated because they're in this kind of cement.
Yeah, and these raised beds are also insulated. They have styrofoam in them. Well, we can start over here at this bed.
Sure.
And so over here, there's peonies, there's roses, some climbing roses back there, peonies, and a few perennials. Stuff like that. These big roses are once blooming. They just bloom in June and then they're done for the season. But they put on a great show with blooms all along these, just coming up all these laterals. Nice. And then this is a rose I got this year and it wasn't doing very well, so I just stuck this around it and put some leaves over top of it, so hopefully it will survive. Yeah. Okay. In this bed, roses, perennials, things like that. I even had some bulbs which I forgot all about, so they're probably not gonna.
I think you've won an award here.
Oh yeah, that was when the Calgary Rose Society did garden competitions.
Yes.
That year our garden won for the best rose garden in Calgary. But when this bed was longer, there was a huge bed here. There were roses in both of these. And it was all tender roses. And if you buy our book, you will see that there's a picture of our rose garden in the book.
Okay.
When it was at its glory.
So you've reduced it just to keep the maintenance a little bit more manageable?
Well, when my husband passed away, I couldn't look after it anymore.
Yeah.
Then we had styrofoam covers that went over the beds and they all started falling apart. And I just couldn't keep it up, so I stopped. And then I got into growing these heritage roses.
Right.
That you can't buy anymore. So that's what a lot of these have. I've started them from suckers or cuttings.
Right.
Where I've gone and got cuttings from these roses and
wonderful.
So.
Oh, it looks nice.
Yeah.
I love that you've kept all your echinacea up too, and your so that all the birds can get to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Wow, you have a lot of roses, Joan.
I know. I have
just a few, Lisa.
I just have a few. Yeah. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, and how it's interesting how, like, how much winter interest there is just from the structure and whatever's left.
I know, and some of the well. They're all just about falling off now. But there's a lot of these heritage roses, these spinosissemas with black hips, and there's some over there. We can show you the black hips.
Yeah, let's do it.
And lots of them change these colors, like this Wilbur you know, they start changing these colors and,
Wow.
you know.
Yeah, you can see how red it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Beautiful.
And this one the same, and there's like big red hips on this rose.
And if you aren't collecting them, you just keep them on.
I just leave them on. But this year, the squirrels started eating some of my hips of the roses. Like I have some that are really close to the ground.
Okay.
The squirrels were eating my hips off, and there were some hips I wanted that got eaten. So
no gardener, I think, really likes squirrels. Like,
well, I know, and I didn't think the squirrels would eat the hips, but they might have, you know, taken it, bit it, and decided, no, I don't like that, and spit it out somewhere.
Yeah, left it behind.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's another one with hips on, and here's a rose with really red foliage.
Oh, it looks so nice.
And
this is
a Spinosissima called Doornbosch Selection is the name of the rose.
Wonderful.
And it's from the Netherlands.
Wow.
Yeah. But
let me get a close up on that. You have signs. You made up.
I have signs.
You made up tags.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's really helpful.
So now these roses over here were just, they were just beautiful because they all changed color. These big Spinosissamas, they all changed color. It was so nice, but you know, maybe you can come back next year.
Yeah, definitely.
When
this is what Joan was talking about, the black hips.
So these are the black hips.
You can see them here too as well.
Yeah.
Here. But yeah, let's get a close up. Very nice. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so different.
Yeah. And inside these black hips are red seeds.
Oh, let's take a look. Oh, they are. The others were kind of creamy yellow.
Yeah. Actually, I have a rose over there that I just threw a seed in there and it actually grew, and I don't even remember doing it. But I sometimes do that, just like I threw those seeds away.
Yeah.
Who knows, they might germinate. But one over there did germinate, came up, and it had a beautiful single peach colored bloom.
Oh, lovely.
So, yeah.
You never know what you're going to get.
I know. So even if you just want to throw them outside, throw some soil over them, maybe it'll work.
Yeah.
Here's another rose that has nice fall foliage. Then this is Kimberly.
Ooh, look how small the hips are.
Yeah. It was a rose found in Kimberly, BC. And it's a species rose. A species rose is like a wild rose. Yeah, but I just leave the hips on, and it's so pretty.
Yeah, it is.
And then one last one I'll show you. This is my Winnipeg Parks.
Oh, nice.
And there's a nice, beautiful red hip on it. Looks like my poor sign needs changing.
Joan, this is the rose that just came up and you didn't even know?
I didn't even know. I just must have thrown some seeds in there, and 3 years later it bloomed, so I've kept it.
It looks really healthy.
Yeah. I always think about digging it out of this raised bed, but it keeps going, so I just leave it.
Yep, why not?
Yeah.
Okay guys, that's it for today. And I hope you enjoyed that, and maybe that inspires you to grow some roses from seed. Thanks again, Joan.
Okay, bye.
Bye for now. Many thanks to the Calgary Rose Society for this collaboration. Since 1960, the Calgary Rose Society has provided education for growing roses in our region's often less than ideal conditions. Through their meetings, newsletter, open gardens, and special events, they promote the cultivation of the Queen of the Garden. Membership information is available at calgaryrosesociety.ca.